Tired of the hassle and risks of manual fruit cutting? Let me introduce our partners over at Supercut System, the automated solution that enhances safety, quality, and efficiency. Cut up to 120 perfect citrus wedges per minute, 6 times faster than manual. Patented technology delivers consistent slices, reducing waste and eliminating plastic. The contactless, hygienic design lowers contamination risk and workplace injuries. Supercut integrates seamlessly for any volume. Improve profitability and customer experience. Experience the power of automation with Supercut. Get started today at supracut.com and be sure to ask about their risk-free trials. Hello, food fam. This is the Walk and Talk podcast, where you'll find the perfect blend of food, fun, and cooking knowledge. I'm your host, Carl Fiedini. Welcome to the #1 food podcast in the country. We're recording on site at Ibis Images Studios, where food photography comes alive, and I get to eat it. Here's a humble request to follow us on Instagram at Walk and Talk Show. Please and thank you. Are you tired of manual fruit cutting? Try Supercut System, an automated solution that cuts 120 citrus wedges per minute. With consistent slices and a hygienic design, it enhances safely and efficiently. Improve your operations at supercut.com and ask about risk-free trials. Welcome to our, I'm talking to you guys, folks. Welcome to our special Mardi Gras edition of the show. It is that time of the year. I mean, it's like all New Orleans all day, the Super Bowl, Mardi Gras. Ooh, wow. Today, we dive into the rich traditions and flavors of the iconic king cake. We're thrilled to be joined by Matt Haines, a New Orleans-based writer and author of The Big Book of King Cake. He's got some other stuff cooking too he's going to talk about. Matt will be sharing his insider expertise on the history, cultural significance, and mouth-watering varieties of this carnival staple. We've got chef Sara Salgado in-house. Sara is a classically trained chef with deep roots in the New Orleans culinary scene, and she'll be walking us through the process of making an authentic king cake from scratch, which she did here in the studio. I got to eat it. I had it. John shot it, photography as usual. It's stinking beautiful. Yeah, that's what I said. And this is exciting for me because I've never had king cake before. And here I am today with king cake as far as the eye can see, and I guess I picked the wrong week to stop eating cake. Matt, Sara, welcome to the show.
It's an honor to be here.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, thank
Absolutely.
you very much for having me.
Well, Matt, welcome back. You were here last year, and it was a really great episode. I don't know. Did I get my book? I didn't see it. Is that book over there? No. Oh, okay. It's cool, man. What's your new book you got coming out?
Yeah, so first book I wrote was The Big Book of King Cake. And then after that, I wrote a children's book called The Little Book of King Cake. And now I'm working on The Big Book of Po' Boy, which should be out in early November of this year.
Look, man, I ain't going to lie. Can I be down? Can I hang? Like, that sounds amazing. You're talking my language right now.
That's what a lot of people have said. And I've sold, at this point now, between the two King Cake books, we've sold over 22,000 copies. But a lot of people are saying, I bought the King Cake book because it's beautiful, but I'm really interested in po' boys. And so, yeah, they are not as naturally pretty to shoot as a king cake is, but the photos are awesome. I'm eating all of them. I've eaten hundreds of po' boys.
My man, I don't know if I agree with you. I mean, yeah, the king cake, they're colorful. I think I would probably, I'm a savory guy, man. I don't know. I think that would probably fit my optics a little even better than the king cake.
They are mouth-watering photos for sure. They're not I wouldn't call them pretty, but they are very impressive looking. I can't, whenever we do a photo, we do this thing where we look through old photos and we set layouts as we're creating the book, and I can't do it on an empty stomach. I have to make sure I eat a big meal before that, or I'm making all sorts of weird decisions.
Amen. That's how I feel around here. Every week we have chefs that run through that come to the studio, and naturally I partake in the grub, in the food. Typically we break bread over here after the cooking is done. We film while we cook, and then once the dish is done, John gets it, he shoots it, and then we jump on the podcast. One of these days, I would love to have you in studio.
Yeah, I would love to be there.
Let's talk about the history and cultural significance of king cakes in New Orleans. Why are they such a big, I mean, they're delicious, that's why, but why are they such a big deal?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, now for anybody who has not been to New Orleans during carnival season, and carnival season goes from January 6th, that's the 12th night of Christmas. It's the day that Christians believe the three kings found baby Jesus and presented their three gifts. And so that's the start of king cake season. And by the way, king cake is named after those three kings. And then we eat king cake all the way until Fat Tuesday or Mardi Gras. So this year, that's January 6th all the way to March 5th. And this is a dessert that truly can be found everywhere. I do a lot of kids' book readings with the Little Book of King Cake, and schools are having king cake at least every Friday in the classroom, many of them more often than every Friday. If you go into an office break room at most offices in New Orleans, you're going to find multiple king cakes there. And then whoever finds the little plastic baby inside that cake is responsible for bringing their king cake the next week. And then, of course, at the parade route, you're finding king cakes everywhere right now. Every bakery has their own, either a traditional version or their own unique twist on it.
Have you noticed whether or not the populace leans towards the traditional, or they're up for something new?
I feel like I'm pretty good at taking in information or things that I'm watching and making sense out of it, but not in this case. So I am a New Yorker originally. I've been in New Orleans for 16 years, and I just tend to love decadent, wild things. And so I'm looking at, a traditional king cake, which oftentimes has no filling inside it at all. Some icing on top, three color, the purple, green, and gold sugar. And I'm looking at that versus I'm looking at a king cake that might have cream cheese and strawberry or chocolate or peanut butter, all these amazing versions that sound so exciting. And then I bring maybe 5 of them into a school, and I'm like, oh, they're definitely going to eat. These kids who love sugar and sweets are definitely going to eat chocolate peanut butter king cakes first, but they don't. Everybody always goes by far and wide. They go to the traditional one first. Preschoolers, kindergartners, 50-year-olds, they all go traditional first. And I don't really understand what's happening, but I guess it's just nostalgia and tradition is my guess.
My pupils are dilated right now. You know what I mean? Like we're talking about all these so I'm with you, by the way, Matt. I would totally go cream cheese. I would go with filling because I'm a fat ass. And that's what I want in my life. Okay. Like when Chef Sara was doing the king cake here, she had finished and there was there were some flat pieces of sugary cinnamon flakes, and chips or whatever. And I'm just eyeballing these things. And, naturally I had to stop whatever I was doing. I was filming, for crying out loud. I had to stop and take the break there and have that. I had to have it in my life right then and there.
Of course. Yeah. I'll cut into a king cake. And then, I did it. So on January, usually when I'm eating king cake now, it's at like an event. I've got a king cake book event almost every night. And fortunately at these events, people are bringing a whole lot of king cakes. So I'm not eating a whole cake by myself. But on January 6th, the start of the season, I'm a journalist. And so sometimes people will send over a king cake, and that is awesome. And I appreciate it. And my girlfriend, she is trying not to eat king cake this season for caloric reasons that I don't agree with, but that's her decision. And so I was stuck with this Brennan's Banana Foster's king cake, this Bananas Foster cream cheese mixture inside. And the first thing I take a slice and I eat it, and then I start to evaluate, okay, which side, because these things are oftentimes braided. So like some areas of the cake have more filling than other. And I will try to determine which direction is going to have more filling than the other way, and I'll start moving in that direction. Yeah, I love decadent things as well.
Man, as it turns out, you and me are like peas and carrots, because you're taking the same approach I would take. Because I do that with almost every meal. You know what I mean? I'm picking if it's a chicken cutlet, all right, I'm going to have to get the perfect chicken cutlet, the slice of pizza, whatever it is. I am looking for that first piece, that first thing I'm going to get is going to be the best ever. Maybe we're selfish.
And it doesn't make me a good person. Exactly. But it's like we're both going to get the same number of slices, but my slices, if I have something to do with it, are going to be just a little bit. There'll be a little bit more in those slices.
My
a little more pepperoni.
You're saying all the right stuff. I got to tell you. Again, pupils absolutely dilated right now. I am ready to continue on with the king cakes. There's a lot of tradition behind it. I don't think it's just everybody going after sugary treats. Can you get into a little bit more about where it comes from?
Yeah, definitely. I love talking about this stuff. And it's something that I think even a lot of New Orleanians, we don't quite realize is that this is a tradition that goes back 4,000 years to ancient Rome. And so they had something called the Saturnalia Festival. This is, again, long before Mardi Gras ever existed. And so the Saturnalia Festival was basically held right around the winter solstice, which is December 21st. And what they were celebrating is what they believed to be that the sun, the god of the sun, was triumphing over these winter spirits. That's what those kind of pagan Romans believed. And they were seeing, what they were seeing is that the months leading up to December 21st, every single day, the sun's apex in the sky would be a little lower than the day before, and the nights would be getting longer and the days would be getting shorter. And so they perceived that as that the sun was dying. And then on December 21st, the day we're celebrating, because every single day after that, the sun was rising higher in the sky. The sun was, the days were longer, the nights were shorter. And so it felt like the sun was triumphing over its enemies. And so it also was a great time to have a feast, because at around December 21st, your fall harvest, all of those, meats that you had in storage and your vegetables that you had harvested, a lot of those were spoiling. Despite your best efforts, they were starting to spoil. So you better eat them now before you lose them. And then it's quite a few months until springtime still, when you're going to get, the earth is going to be reproducing food again. And so the idea was put on a whole lot of pounds now before this time period of dearth and struggle. And so during that Saturnalia festival, they would eat too much to put on those pounds. They would drink too much. They would take 2 weeks off of work. They would wear colorful costumes. They would sing and parade in the streets. And this sounds a whole lot like our Mardi Gras does today. It's a lot of the same traditions. And in the middle of that feast, they would have a cake of their own. And it looks a little bit, if people are familiar with a galette des rois, which is like a French style of king cake, it literally translates to cake of kings. The Romans would have something like that, which was circular, not ring shaped like we know king cake today. And it would be golden like the sun and circular like the sun. And inside the middle of that cake, there would be not a little plastic baby like we do, but a fava bean. And whoever got the slice with the fava bean inside is crowned king or queen of the Saturnalia. And whereas in New Orleans, you're crowned king or queen of your school classroom, for example, and then you're expected to bring the next king cake the following week. Not like that in Rome. Rather than bringing the next cake, you were actually sacrificed to the gods. So it was a much higher stakes, thing to find that fava bean inside the cake.
So where did the mashup come from between Roman history and Jesus Christ? Where did that come in?
Yeah, so the Roman Republic spread out and became the Roman Empire, from Bulgaria in the east to the British Isles in the west. And when the Roman Empire collapsed, the next kind of big power to occupy all that space was Christianity. And the Christians wanted to convert those pagans to their religion. And so rather than replacing all of the traditions that had existed in their beliefs, they merged them together. And so Saturnalia was December 21st. And so Christians weren't quite sure exactly when Jesus was born. So they said, well, why don't we just do it around the same time of year? And so rather than Christmas being one day, kind of like we think about it now, it was the 12 days of Christmas. And on that 12th night of Christmas is the day that the Christians believe that the three kings found Jesus. And so they made that Saturnalia cake. They decided to honor the three kings, and they called it a Three Kings cake. And even in 1700s in New Orleans and early 1800s, when you look at newspaper articles, sometimes it was called a Three Kings cake still. And then eventually that became a king's cake and then a king cake. And so many different countries around Europe today, and many of the places that was touched by Europe. So Mexico has a tradition as well, and so do we, obviously. They have their own distinct version of king cake. Ours comes from southern France. It looks a lot like that southern French version of king cake called a gâteau des rois, cake of kings. And in early New Orleans time, 1700s and 1800s, Creole New Orleanians, so those are New Orleanians with European descent, on January 6th would have their king cake. And there would be maybe a pecan hidden inside. And whoever found the pecan, crowned king or queen, 12th night. So again, it's just a Christmas tradition, has nothing to do with Mardi Gras. And then eventually, and then they would be responsible for bringing the king cake 1 year from now. But as non-Creole New Orleanians started to discover this tradition during the late 1800s, thanks to carnival season, they said, this is too fun. Why are we just doing this once a year? Let's do it if you get the bean or the pecan inside the cake, how about we host another party next week? And so then it became, and every Friday there's a king cake party tradition. And then that Christmas time tradition started to encroach into what was becoming carnival season. And it went all the way through carnival season to Mardi Gras Day. And the reason it didn't go the next day was because that was Lent. And all of a sudden, this is a cake that we can't eat anymore. And so that's how it went from being a Christmas time tradition in Europe to all of a sudden a carnival Mardi Gras tradition here in, kind of along the Gulf Coast. And we're the only place in the world that it's a Mardi Gras tradition and then a Christmas tradition.
I think it's fascinating that you're a New Yorker and you transplanted yourself to New Orleans. Have you been embraced by the locals? Are you considered now a local? The fact that you have all of this knowledge and respect for the local traditions and whatnot, how are you embraced?
I love watching people's faces when I start at King Cakes. I could talk forever about King Cake history. And so I've got a nice a restrained 25-minute King Cake history presentation. I'm doing one at the library tonight, for example, but I did one at this French Quarter high society function yesterday. And so always at the beginning, I'll tell my kind of journey to King Cake. And it's a funny story. And I love that. I love watching people's faces when they find out that the person who's about to talk to them about King Cake is from New York, because there are definitely some frowns and some scowls. And I really lean into it. And then I can usually win them over. I always say that, being a New Yorker, I never thought to make a book about pizza or bagels. You kind of take those things for granted a little bit. And it was only I think a lot of Louisianians, they love King Cake, but don't always look deep into it the same way that I did. For me, King Cake was what in the world is this? So I wanted to explore it. And maybe that's not something that we always do when it's an item that is, right there in front of us from birth, basically.
So what you're saying is there's a collective whisper of New York City happening in the crowd. Right?
Yeah, I feel like I can hear it. And then I own it. And then eventually I think people by the end, they're buying the book. So I don't think they're too upset with me by the end. And it's a funny presentation. New Orleans is a place that I can never say that I am from New Orleans. I think that would be a stepping into a pothole. But I think that I chose New Orleans. My family's back in New York. I chose to be in New Orleans because I love it so much and I love its unique traditions. And so to be able to learn about them and write about them is a lot of fun for me.
To give a deeper perspective of how big this whole King Cake operation is, talk about the economics of King Cake in New Orleans.
Yeah. There's no definitive number, though that would be a great project to do. Truly not just every bakery, but many restaurants, many breakfast, cafes, many chocolatiers, they all have their own. The Audubon Insectarium has a cricket king cake. So everybody tries to put their own spin on a king cake based on what, their story is or what their business is. And so I think when I created the book, so a couple of years ago, a number we found was something like 750,000 king cakes being consumed in New Orleans alone during carnival season. And I think it's impossible. That number must be so much higher now, even just a few years later. There's so much growth every year. And I remember when we were interviewing people for the book, a few things that stand out to me. One was a baker, La Boulangerie on Magazine Street. Maggie Scales is the head baker there. And she said that selling king cakes during carnival season is so essential because that's the profit, the revenue that's going to help your bakery get through a long summer in New Orleans. New Orleans is a tough time. Not many people want to visit New Orleans when it's 100 degrees plus there. And so for bakeries to be able to survive that summer selling king cakes and having a great king cake season is really important for them. And then another baker told me that, they actually are only open during carnival season. This is Kaywood and Randazzo's. Randazzo's is one of the big king cake families. And they made a joke. They said, our goal is to sell enough king cakes during January and February so that the rest of the year we can just go fishing, which I appreciate. There's a lot of king cakes being sold this time of year, and that is really important to the survival of bakeries the rest of the year.
If I'm not mistaken, our good friend Sean Pooch Rivera sent some king cake from Randazzo's. Chefs and food buyers, let me tell you about a product that will generate new excitement on your menu. Fully cooked, pasture-raised, all-natural Australian lamb from Aussie Select. Their award-winning, handcrafted, innovative products are blended with the finest spices and amazing flavors. Options include agave rosemary, tikka masala, lamb pastrami, and lamb prime rib roast. Available sliced or whole with a long shelf life too. Find out more at AussieSelect.com.
I think he was going to send it from there. I'm not sure where they were coming from.
I believe that's what he told me, and I could be wrong. I'm still waiting for these king cakes, but you know, at the end of the day, they should be arriving today sometime.
Randazzo's is pretty good.
Is it? Well, so that leads me to my next question, and I have two people here, you know, with Sarah and Matt that could probably answer this, and not to take away from anyone else, but like if there was if you were going to go to a traditional shop to get your king cake, well, who is it? And if you were going to a modern, more modern style king cake, who would that be?
I would say Randazzo's. I've had my fill of Randazzo's, definitely. I actually know somebody that works at that bakery. Dong Fong is like the number one hot seller. I can't remember who was doing it, but like we were talking about the dopage.
You know, like at Gambino's, they are kind of famous for their dopage and kind of a traditional bakery
I think
well.
Gambino's might have done the dopage style, but I can't remember exactly. I never got to try that because every time you would go to get it, you'd have to wait in line forever down the block.
Sure.
Matt, what say you?
I think that for a traditional king cake, like I'll do a lot of like events that are king cake and wine and cheese pairing or king cake and beer pairing, and we'll try to do 5 different king cakes. And so I do want to include a traditional one in there. I try to mix it up. Randazzo's is such a good one because it's like king cake Game of Thrones. Basically, there's all these like different, it all started one father and his 3 brothers, and like generations and generations later, there's lawsuits and divorces, and people are saying they're stealing the recipe and bringing it to other bakeries. So that is fun from a story perspective. I think that Gambino's, specifically the filled Gambino's king cakes, are really delicious. And then Coluda's, which is a traditional king cake spot, they're pretty innovative as well. So they're traditional. They've got a great traditional king cake, which some people say is a lot curiously like Randazzo's, because there was a lawsuit involved there. But every week they'll do something different, like a boudin king cake or a brownie king cake or a lava king cake, all sorts of things. So that makes it fun too.
You had me at boudin.
Yeah, boudin king cake is really, really good. And especially, you know, when I was creating the book and I'm eating hundreds of different king cakes, anytime there was a savory one, a sushi king cake or something like that, I was very grateful to give my taste buds a rest for a second.
But on these newfangled king cakes, are the older establishments doing them too, or are they kind of just sticking with the tried and true?
That it's a little bit of a mix. I think that someplace like Randazzo's, I don't think they're doing boudin king cake. I don't think they're getting wildly innovative because for them, their business is all about that tradition. So I don't think their customers would even want it. So I think that you have that. And then I think maybe a place like Coluda's is a little bit of a unicorn kind of between the two. They've got their traditional, but I think they just have a desire to just try different things. But if you want to have those unique king cakes, then it's best to just go to, see what's out there. Every bakery is putting their own spin on it. And so I don't think besides a place like Coluda's, which has the capacity to make so many king cakes, it can try many different styles. Most places are just like, oh, this chocolatier has the really good chocolate king cake. There's a Vietnamese restaurant on the West Bank on the other side of the Mississippi River, and they have like a café de sous, which is a Vietnamese style of coffee that they put inside a king cake. And then they've got a Pandan style like filled king cake as well. So there's all sorts of amazing versions. And then that's what I think, like when you're going to a king cake party and you want to bring something unique, finding one of those smaller bakeries that are doing something really different is a lot of fun.
Is there such a thing called king cake etiquette?
New Orleans is a funny place because people get really passionate about rules in certain instances. And so, for example, there is an ongoing debate about whether you're supposed to keep the knife inside the king cake box or take it outside of the box and wash it kind of every time you're done. I think that the people who say they're keeping the knife in, they're getting real loud about it and kind of winning the debate. But that would be an example of like these king cake rules. Another like very, like people take it very seriously is that you can not eat king cake outside of carnival season. So again, January 6th till this year, it's March 4th. Sometimes I think last year it was January 6th to February 13th. So a much smaller season. You are, if somebody sees you eating king cake on January 4th, I would not be surprised if they knocked it out of your hand, which I always think is funny. Yeah, I always think it's funny because king cake used to just be a January 6th and January 6th only thing. And so it's fun to think that we are, in fact, the ones who have already bastardized this tradition. But now we've kind of set a rule. This is what we know. And so don't deviate from this. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Definitely king cake etiquette out there.
It's almost like a Hatfields and McCoy sort of thing, right?
Yes.
Wow.
Absolutely.
I mean, listen, I would probably look to smuggle my king cake in somewhere and eat it in the confines of my home. And that's what I would probably do.
That's if you can find it.
I'm sure I'd find
They don't make it before then.
Really?
Yes.
You'd have to pay a chef, baker or something like on the side, get it brought in. Real hush, on the hush, man. You know?
Maybe.
Oh my goodness.
You saying the word king cake smuggle kind of reminded me of something funny that I saw this year for the first time. And so I was on January 6th, I was at Dang Phang Bakery, which Sarah said surprisingly it's a Vietnamese bakery that has become the most popular king cake in New Orleans. And so I thought, this will be a good place to get there early and sell some books. And so I asked Lynn Tran, I was like, when should I get there? And she was like, well, we open at 8, but people start getting there at 4:30 in the morning. Wow. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to get there at 4:30 in the morning, but I'll get there like 7 or so. And it was cold for New Orleans. It was like 39 degrees. It was chilly. And truly people had started lining up before 5 a.m., which is bonkers. Now I was there signing books. It was cold, having a nice time though. And this one guy comes up to me and he says, hey, can I buy a book? I was like, sure. Who do you want me to make it out to? And he was like, make it out to and he kind of whispered to me. He's like, make it out to the king cake smugglers. And I was like, what is that? And he's like, and then he said, don't ask questions you don't want to know the answer to. And
because he was serious.
He was semi-serious. And so what these guys, I figured it out. What these guys do is, so they're in Mississippi along the Gulf Coast. And so they will, maybe even Alabama, I remember someplace in there, and they go to Dang Phang once or twice a week and buy as many king cakes as they can get their hands on, which you're only allowed to get like 3 or 4 if you stand in line at a time. So they just go in line, buy 4, get back in line, buy more, as many as they're allowed to take. And then they drive them back home across the border. So they're smuggling them across the border and they just sell them out of bars near their hometown.
And they're taxing it too. They're taxing that king cake.
For shame.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, they're making money somehow.
Listen, Matt, I know that you have a hard cutoff here. I'm going to ask you a question before you go. I think you have a photo shoot coming up, right?
I do, for the Po' Boy book. Yeah.
Okay.
We're in the middle of a photo shooting right now.
What advice do you have for first-time visitors to New Orleans on the best ways to experience this thing that is king cake?
Yes, that's a very good question. And I feel like if somebody has just one king cake, I don't think it's pretty common for them to say something like, oh yeah, I mean, king cake was fine, but it's kind of just like a cinnamon roll, right? And so I think that probably is the very traditional version of king cake. And, maybe with no filling. That's certainly important to try. There's so much nostalgia around that. But I would say try multiple king cakes. And there's ways to do that. I think the most interesting development in king cake in the last couple of years is that there's all of these places now that sell multiple versions in one place. So you don't have to, it used to be that you'd have to drive around from place to place all over town, putting miles on your car, taking a whole afternoon to try to get to even a few king cake places. Now you can go to a place called the King Cake Hub, and there's going to be 40 to 50 different kinds of king cake in one place. If you want to just get slices of king cake, there's a place called the King Cake Feast, and the A is in parentheses. So it could be king cake, or maybe the A's in parentheses. So it's like a king cake fest or a king cake feast. And they meet up once a week during carnival season, and you can buy slices from like 30 different bakeries. And so I think things like that are a fun way to really get the scope and variety of what's out there. In that variety is where king cake gets really interesting, and where you see all these different bakers are making their own versions, and behind every single cake there's a story, not just of these bakeries, but the story of New Orleans. And I think that's what I tried to do in the book, and I think that's where the fun in king cake is for people coming to try it for the first time.
That's so awesome. Are these guys, the restaurants and bakeries and whatnot, are they set up for shipping? Do they ship these things out of state?
Yeah, they do.
Many do. Yeah. Many do. I think my all-time favorite is Tartine, and they are pretty inexpensive for a king cake at this point, especially a king cake that's this good. I think it's like $30 or $31, and then they'll set up for shipping as well. Like they ship 2 or 3 times a week. I think they do. Plenty of bakeries do.
Elevate your dining experience with Rack Porcelain USA. As the exclusive tableware brand for the Walk and Talk podcast, Rack combines exceptional craftsmanship with innovative design. Whether you're a chef, a restaurant owner, or a food enthusiast, Rack's high-quality porcelain products will enhance every meal. Discover the artistry of food presentation and make every dining occasion special. Visit rackporcelain.com today and see how Rack can transform your table. And folks, listen, if you want to purchase the Big Book of King Cake, go to thebigbookofkingcake.com. Matt will sign it and ship it. I would do it. He's a good guy. I've seen the book. It's gorgeous. Photography's great. I mean, nothing's as good as a Hernandez pick. But I'm just saying, he did a terrific, phenomenal job. I had to say that for my boy John over here. Matt, I appreciate you spending some time with us today. You and me, let's try to jump on a call. I know that you're swamped. I do want to get on a phone call with you, and let's set some other stuff up. I think we have a lot of things we can do that would just be super amazing for content and, just getting the word out for everything that you're doing and what we're doing. And
yeah, let's do it. If it's king cake related, then whenever you want, let's make it happen. If it's not king cake related, then I think I'll have so much more time once the season's done. And so you tell me, but I would love to.
It might be po' boy related. I'm just saying. Okay.
Can I be invited back then?
I'm down.
100%. Of course. We'll probably have a line of people here that want to, hey, can we get to the studio that day? All right. Listen, Matt, be well. We'll catch you on the other side, man. Be good. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. And Sarah, sorry I missed your king cake. I hope I get it sometime.
I'd love to share it with you.
Excellent.
Awesome. All right. Talk to you guys soon.
Take care, Matt. Sarah, you made an amazing cake today.
Thank you.
Can you give the abridged version of how to make a king cake? It takes effort and you have to know what you're doing, but I think people can do this at home.
They can. It's really not hard at all. A very basic, simple king cake it just takes patience. And of course you have to know how to read a recipe, but the abridged version of it is you make a simple kind of brioche style dough. You have to bloom yeast, sugar, milk, egg, flour, of course. Allow the dough time to rise. Roll it out, fill it, roll it up, braid it, form it, allow it to rise again, pop it in the oven until it's golden brown and beautiful. And then you ice it however you want.
It's like a 4-hour process, right?
Yes. It can take a little bit longer, a little bit around that time, depending on your humidity level, where you are, how hot your kitchen is, whether you're in the deep south, like the swamp area, like Louisiana, or someplace like here. It just all depends on the humidity. That can cause your dough to rise faster, which can speed up the process, which isn't always good, but roughly 4 to 5 hours.
John, I'm waiting to see these pictures already. I ain't gonna lie. Sarah, I'm so happy that you came out today. And I know you had a little reservation about it too. Our boy, Sean Pooch Rivera. Well, you know what, John? Why don't you look at you. Get Sean on the phone.
Hello.
Sean, it's Carl, Walk and Talk. How you doing, my man?
Carl, what's going on, baby boy?
I tell you what, I'm never going to call you Pooch again. After what I've learned from Chef Sarah, I'll still call you Pooch. We had a great featured guest in Matt Haines. You knew that he was going to be on the show, and it was very entertaining.
I saw him last week at the King Cake, the WYES King Cake, King Cake and Conversation. He was the main focus of the conversation. He was a great guy. Always a great guy.
He's easy to talk to. He's incredibly educated on all things king cake. His new po' boy book is coming out, and I'm kind of excited about that. I need some po' boy in my life. I don't know when you're getting over here, but that's what we're going to do next time you come here to the studio.
Ironically, that's what we've been doing all day today is making po' boys for all the private jet Lear pilots that are coming in town today, tomorrow, all of the above. So
for the big
every
game
day right now, we're actually for the big games. We are in the preparation, but we have the privilege of we gained the contract to do all of the private jets that come in and out. So as much as I want to enjoy the festivities in New Orleans and all of the hoopla and everything that's going on, it is an opportunity to take advantage of all the great contracts and blessings that come our way economically through this. So we are definitely hustling.
Well, I would go get yourself some king cake and celebrate. So listen,
I'm already about 3 or 4 king cakes deep this season, so I think I need to cut back on the king cake. But what's going on, brother?
Yeah, I heard that. I mean, I had half a king cake today myself. You have
and that's your first time having a king cake, correct?
Yes, and I got on video too.
I love it.
There was almost a fight.
Did the king cake SNN come?
There was a fight. You had a special shout out that you wanted to put out there, right?
I do. I want to shout out Eric Cook, the king of modern Creole. That's his new book that's out right now. But he also his new book is modern Creole. But he is the king of modern Creole. I love him very much. Very good friend. We've been in the trenches together a long time in this culinary industry, and he is really excited. He's just bending over backwards for Stan Hayes from Operation Barbecue Relief, Eric Greenspan from out in LA, who they've been out there feeding everyone, whether it be the firemen who are fighting the fires to the actual people who lost everything in that horrible devastation out there. They were out there fighting the odds, I guess you would say, and feeding all those people. And, Greenspan and Stan, they handle everything from, they did everything in the hills of Appalachians where I was. And then they were down in Tampa. They kind of help out everybody, kind of like how we try to help everybody out. But Eric Cook is making sure, bending over backwards to make sure that we're all accommodated this Friday night. And he's kind of throwing a soiree together. I wish you guys could be here just to kind of honor them. And those guys are in town because they're doing a big NFL barbecue kickoff thing with a bunch of NFL players and stuff like that. So it's really, really cool. Yeah. But I just wanted to make sure that Eric Cook was shout out because he is really taking the time to make sure that we're accommodated when obviously in New Orleans, hospitality is the name of the game, but we're more worried about everyone who's coming in town being taken care of rather than our own. But this time, Eric's making sure that I guess that was rather oxymoronic because he's taking care of us. But we have guests in town, and he's bending over backwards to make sure that other chefs that are normally worried about everybody else, he's worried about the chefs rather than worried about the guests. So that's the chefs are the guests this time, should I say?
The other day, I was on the phone with Aaron Robbins. He was interviewed by Operation Barbecue. And it was a terrific interview. He's in an area that was affected over there. Boneyard is his barbecue spot. He's been around for 20 years plus. He's actually a culinarian. He's got a heck of a bio. He's going to be on the show. We're gonna do a special broadcast for that. So that's coming up, and I guess you meeting with Stan and me with Aaron. I'd love to give them as much support as possible. It's a great outfit, and they do a lot.
They do a lot for everybody. And I tell you, Eric Greenspan as well. I mean, he killed it out there at the World Food Championships with his demos and whatnot. And he always adds a spice of life and just, humility and humor to everything he does. So he's fun to hang with, and it's going to be awesome. I have about a 5-hour period to be able to hang out with everybody and then get back to the grind of making sure that these jets, when they leave New Orleans, are fed. So we're feeding all the pilots, the stewardesses, the stewards, and the actual people who are in the airplanes that are leaving, or should I say private jets. So I have about 5 hours to hang out and hopefully maybe consume 1 or 2 drinks and then get back to normal life and spend the whole night from 7 p.m. till 7 a.m., accommodating all these jets. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty fun. But at the same time, it's an arduous process, you know?
You're fighting the good
so
fight,
is the
brother.
Culinary life.
You are doing that.
I'm fighting a good fight, baby.
You're
I'm fighting
doing
a good fight. The energy's real here in New Orleans, man. I love it. I'm proud to be from New Orleans. I'm proud to be from the hospitality, you know, mecca of the United States and maybe even the world. But we're hosting. We hold a record for the most Super Bowls, and we know how to do it well. We're built to host. That's what we call it. We're built to host.
Who do you got on the game?
It's a tough one. I tell you what, for the economic value, the fact that the Swifties come in town and, you know, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce and all that hoopla with, you know, the bandwagon that brings and spends a lot more money and brings a lot of, you know, we've had a lot of kind of some bad things happening down here with the, you know, certain things that happen on the New Year, what have you. Everybody reads the paper. You know, that's bringing a lot more fanfare to the city, and I kind of appreciate that. Taylor Swift was here maybe about a month or two ago, sold out all 3 nights at the Superdome, and obviously she's going to be in town for her boyfriend playing. So I don't like the fact that they're going to three-peat, but I kind of want them to three-peat with Kansas City. But I'm a diehard Saints fan, so at the end of the day, that's who I really want to win. Next year, always next year.
You heard it here, folks. Always next year. It's a true story.
Always next year, baby. Always next year.
All right, good to catch you on the line. We'll catch you on side B.
Gotcha. Love y'all. Johnny, I love you, baby. Sarah, I'm so glad you were on there. And Carl, you know I love you, boy. Y'all be good.
Go get it.
Talk to you soon.
All right.
Sarah, I am thrilled that you made it out here today. I really am.
I'm super happy to be here.
This was like harmless, right?
It really was. It wasn't as bad as I built it up in my head to be.
Yeah, she was nervous. She was very nervous. We talked about it. There was a ledge. Brought her back in. It was okay. You know, we're still waiting on king cakes to arrive to the studio. We have Chef Ricardo Castro here, local baker and chef, that sent some, and I can't wait. I saw pictures of what they look like. Can't wait for them to get here. And there's actually a New Orleans product. I think it's Rendazzo's. That's due to arrive as well. We're looking to take pictures of everything. Some really great king cake photography, and man, I tell you what, I'm gonna have some more king cake now. How do you like that?
You want me to cut you a slice?
Oh hell yeah!
Okay.
All right, listen, Sarah.
it.
Again, appreciate you, John. I'm gonna take all the king cake you're getting on. We are out. Let me tell you about my friends over at Citrus America and their amazing juicing equipment. They're revolutionizing the way you enjoy freshly squeezed juice. They're at the best hotels, restaurants, and markets. Their mission is simple. Develop a unique consumer experience with on-premise juicing, deliver healthy taste options to clientele, and juice more faster. It's that easy. Citrus America supplies the highest quality juicing equipment and solutions in the industry. So whether you're a small business owner or a large corporation, Citrus America has the right juicing equipment for you. Find out more at citrusamerica.com.